counties. 48 states get this right. If you're going to reassess every year, every 5 years, every 10 years, every 15 years, whatever we do, we got to have a unified, consistent, statewide methodology so that every county is doing the same thing at the same time with the same methods. So regardless of where you live, how we value a home is going to be the same in all 67 counties. Right now, it's a free-for-all. Every county does their own thing and there's no rules. Some never do it, some try to do it. That's a crazy philosophy, and no other states do this except, again, one. So I would change that. I would also make sure we have protections per household. The way these other states do it, they make sure that when they do a reassessment, it doesn't automatically trigger a tax increase. They try to make it revenue neutral, and if there are adjustments, they phase it in maybe 2% per year. There's real protection. There's none right now in Pennsylvania. When my predecessor did the reassessment, we had 16,000 properties see their tax bill, not their assessment, their tax bill double, and that was legal. There's no way to stop it. And the other problem, when a county does a reassessment, school districts and municipalities, they just take the windfall and they raise taxes without taking a vote. And I'm against that. That bill, though, I'd be willing as governor to put that forward to a referendum to the voter if two things that were met. One, that it have to be an elimination of property taxes as it relates to funding of schools. Not a reduction, an elimination. Because a reduction means they'll raise them anyway. Again, you have two new taxes, and I don't want that. And two, it's got to be a real replacement revenue, dollar for dollar. It can't be fake. The Senate and the House, they vote every year to cut property or eliminate property taxes, and they're all afraid to put a real revenue to replace it. I know one of the bills is go from property taxes to a sales tax. If the number's real, and it would replace the revenues coming from property taxes, I'd have no problem signing a bill that would let the voters of Pennsylvania vote up or down if we want to shift the way we want to fund schools. I think it's a legitimate proposal, but it's got to be real, and let the voters decide if they want to do that for the schools. I would sign that. I would want it to be a referendum, though. I would want the voters to have a chance to vote on it.
You mentioned the numbers earlier in terms of the deficit that Pennsylvania is facing, and yet we have transportation infrastructure that's falling apart, we're told. What are the solutions that you think are the most viable right now?
Well, again, differences between me and Tom. I'm an elected official that had to stand up and make a decision. I publicly supported Act 44. I lobbied for it as county executive. I have the second largest delegation in the House and the Senate, and I had to go get it because I have highways, I have bridges, and I have the second largest transportation agency, Port Authority. I also represent SPC, which is the Southwest Planning Commission, 14 counties. And I watched when the governor tried to flex dollars twice, pitting rural against city, highways and bridges against transit. It was a horrible situation. I said I would never do that. And when the governor tried to suggest it again this time, we voted it down in the West, all 10 counties. So I supported Act 44 because it was the first time it funded highways, bridges, and transportation. But when the tolling of I-80 collapsed, it blew a $472 million hole in the statewide transportation budget. That needs to be closed. Because for one reason, on a personal note, $50 million of that number was coming to our mass transit that's now gone. And I'm going to probably cut 30% of our bus routes if it doesn't get filled. And I know I'm not the only one like that. The highways, bridges, everything was cut. So we're going to do three things. One, we need efficiencies in the current system, and making sure we spend every current dollar wisely. For example, somebody said to me there might be a lot of room for improvement if you look at PennDOT and the Turnpike Commission. Do we need both of them? That if we merged them, we might be able to save a lot of money. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but what I do know is I will explore it. If we could save a couple $100 million by merging those two, I would merge them in a minute, if that makes sense. If somebody could show me it's real money and it would make sense. That's what I did in Allegheny County for 7 years. Kept merging things and consolidating, being efficient. That's one suggestion. And making sure that they spend the money they have right now for repairs and maintenance. Two, I support P3 legislation, public-private partnerships, where if we can get a private company to buy the development rights along a new road or a new extension, I'd be more than happy to sell development rights to get private money to match with public money so we can do more in these tough times. And then three,
just to clarify, that's for new?
It probably would only work for new. I don't know how you would do it for existing roads unless there was a way we could sell development rights that we owned. And if we could, I'd explore that too. You know, maybe I don't know what the state owns along the interstates, if that's any of our property. I know we own a lot along the turnpike, and maybe there's something to do there you could sell, and I would put that on the table if it made sense.
Sorry to interrupt. Number 3.
Number 3 is dedicated funding long term. Now, I think fees are an appropriate way to fund a lot of this. I don't think this is the time to raise any of them. I think we got to do the expenditure side first. To prove to the taxpayers we'll get our own fiscal house in order. Here's a few things we should do before we even think about revenues. One, there's $200 million sitting in the legislature called leadership account money. That should be moved back over right away, either into operating or in the transportation budget. There's tens of millions of dollars of walking around money that should be moved back into the operating or transportation budget. Long term, as the economy starts to turn around and we get more revenues from just a better economy, I would commit to putting the $500 million that we take out of the Transportation Trust Fund to pay for state police back into the trust fund for highways and bridges, so that we pay for the state police out of the operating fund. That would be a significant number that was supposed to go for maintenance and roads and bridges, but we now use for state police. I would put that back. And then, you know, after we've done everything on the expenditure side, looked at it, if we need dedicated funding, I will look at the proposals that came out of the Transportation Review Committee, whatever they called it. We don't have to do another study. We have enough studies out there. It's pretty clear what our options are. But I wouldn't start with the revenue side. I'll start on the expenditure side and try to show that we can get our current fiscal house in order. I mean, this is tough. High unemployment. People are hurting. We should try to do this without raising the revenues. I don't know if anybody can commit to that forever going forward, but I think for the next 2 years to do everything we can to live within our means and put pressure on the legislature to fix the expenditure side of government first and not just use a crutch and look for revenues right away.
On the same topic of consolidation and merging, what about local governments in Pennsylvania? Where do you stand on the issue? In Luzerne County, for instance, there are 76 municipalities. Some people say that's not very efficient.
I have 130 municipalities in Allegheny and 43 school districts. It's what's great and what's bad about Pennsylvania. We have 2,600 municipalities. It's way too much government. We have 500 school districts. It's way too many school districts. I support consolidation either of municipalities or of their services. In my county right now, we're merging police departments and volunteer fire companies. I do it through incentives as opposed to dictating it, because I can't dictate it. We just did our first successful merger of volunteer fire companies. I put a $250,000 grant up to match their money, and they built a new firehouse centrally located, and we consolidated 4 of them. We now have 3 consolidations going on with police departments. 2 in the North Hills part of our county, where Ohio Township Police is for 10 municipalities now. 9 of them got out of the business and we formed a regional department. The Northern Tier has a regional department, and I'm now trying to convince the old industrial part of my county, which is middle of McKeesport, and I've offered to build a police station and buy police cars if they consolidate 10 of their independent police departments. These are poor municipalities that are broke. They all have their own chief of police, so without spending a penny more, we could have 1 chief of police and take the other 9 and make them full-time police officers on the street and have a regional Southern Mon Valley Police Department. As governor, what I'm going to do is create a pot of money, and all these municipalities that are slipping in the Act 47 or on the verge of bankruptcy, say, listen, we're not going to bail you out just to keep doing what you've always been doing when you shouldn't exist anymore. But if you're willing to come with us with a consolidation plan, we're going to give you money. We're going to help you do the consolidation. We'll help you merge the pension funds. We'll help you merge your police departments. We'll help you merge your volunteer fire companies. But give us a reason to give you money. Show us that you're going to really save and fix the problem long term, and that will help you. So it's sort of a little bit of the carrot and the stick approach, where if you don't want it, then you're on your own and you raise your own local taxes. Or if you want help from the state, you got to fix what we've been doing. In 2,600 municipalities, it's just way too many.
Other questions from the group?
Oh, and one other thing, 3,100 pension funds. We have something like 25% of all the country's pension funds in Pennsylvania, and like 20% of ours have 7 or less people in them. I would wrap those up into 1 or 3 pension funds overnight. It's way too much, and we should have 1 statewide municipal fund, or maybe 3 statewide if you have to break up police, fire, and municipal. But 3,100, that's a little crazy. That's 3,100 consultants, advisors, lawyers. It's a waste of money, and you don't get expertise either. I would pull those resources together.
voters in Luzerne County have heard a lot lately about corruption within the county itself, some of the school boards, but they're also reading more recently about some investigations in Harrisburg. The culture there, I think there's just a concern about what is the culture there that allows this to happen? Do you have a philosophy on that?
Yeah, I think that in Harrisburg, and I know what you're referring to here, but Harrisburg, I think the Senate and the House, for years, this was the way they did business, and there really wasn't much exposure from the media and from the public what they were doing for years. And I think what happened was once they got too greedy and they went with that midnight pay raise, all of a sudden the spotlight was on the whole system. And now all of a sudden we're exposing something that people had no idea was happening. And when they see it, it gets more outrageous each time a new issue comes out. That's why I do believe that reforming the legislature and downsizing it, we've never had a better opportunity than we do right now. Because the public has never been this focused on what's going on in Harrisburg as they are right now. And we got to take advantage of that to change this. And that's what I think that's what's happened. The light was exposed, and people finally realized, whoa, this is the most expensive legislature. And then the other thing on top of that is when the economy went in the tank nationally, you got 10% unemployment, and they see what their elected officials are making and doing, that even added to it. And so all of that happened in the last 3 or 4 years, and now all of a sudden there's real pressure out there to reform and change what they're doing.
Any other must-ask questions? Again, we want to thank you for being here, for having a conversation with us. Is there anything that we didn't ask about that you particularly want to mention, or anything you want to emphasize?
I would just say that the point that I want to emphasize is that I really believe the biggest difference between me and Tom at this point is what we've run. I mean, he's the Attorney General for 7 years or 6 years. I've been running the second largest county. I've been running a much bigger budget, and I've been an executive doing it, not a row officer. And I have real experience of reforming government, of downsizing government, taking on my own party and taking on entrenched institutions, and a real track record of working with the private sector to create jobs. Regardless of whatever commercial you hear, the facts are this, that we have one of the lowest unemployment numbers in the state. It's much lower than the state, much lower than the federal number, so we're doing something right. And we're weathering the storm much better than other areas. We're not immune to what's happened. We lost jobs too, but we created enough jobs that our unemployment rate has been kept to a decent number compared to where the country is and other parts of the state are.
And you've been traveling around the state. You have that 8-year cycle with the governor's seat, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. The state has a large Democratic edge of registrations. What are the people saying here? What's the sentiment out there, and how do you win this election?
Well, the polls are getting real tight, I think, only because people are focusing on the race, and you're seeing our larger voter registration edge is not pulling it closer together. The way I win it, if we're statistically tied going into the last week, it's going to be who runs the better campaign getting their vote out. And I think we could do that, number one. Number two, the 8-year cycle, I sort of say it tongue-in-cheek, that's 62 years old. Every 8 years we switch parties. But we have a better cycle, and that is that we've never elected an attorney general to be governor. That's a lot longer than 62 years. So he's got his own cycle problems to worry about. I actually think this is going to come down to election day. The poll numbers, Joe Sestak and I are getting closer and closer. And every poll you look at, it's statistically tied because most of them are margin of errors of 4, within 4. And I think the only difference is people are trying to guess the turnout number. If I get out my vote and I get my message out, I win the race. If I don't, then I lose the race.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.